Hey everybody, welcome back to Old War Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host, Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
Sigmar is awesome.
So, yes, Sigmar is awesome.
For
So we're
Sigmar!
continuing our series where we're going through the 1.5 updates, and we're going through each faction, talking about some of the biggest things that we noticed in terms of how they've changed, how they've been updated, where they've won, where they've lost, and such. Now that we've run a couple events with these rules, we've seen what players have been taking. We've got a lot of games under our belt. We feel pretty confident what we're seeing today. This might change in the future, but Evan, let's dive into Empire and let's talk about what are the big things we're seeing.
I think that it's a little bit early to call exactly what we're seeing at the events. We've seen a good mix of people
Mhm.
bringing out things they've been wanting to play for a long time, like the Greatswords, or you're just bringing out pretty much the list that we've been running before. I know that I had one of our Empire players. I was suggesting him, you should probably bring some halberdiers because with the objectives, it's good to have a little break of infantry as a backup to go run over there and be like, cool, I'm standing there. I'm a little bit hard to get
Mhm.
rid of. And if all you have is units of a couple knights and some Demigryph Knights, it's harder to try to contest those objectives. So I saw that on the table. I know one of our other players, Martin, he's a good friend of mine. He was bringing out his great swords. He does the old metal ones.
Mhm.
Very, very cool. I actually really like the newer plastic ones. And then there's also Tudorsian Guard. So it's just like similar to High Elves, you've got a lot of cool options that I think became a lot less incredibly terrible very recently. Just Great Swords were probably in the running for the worst unit in the entire game before 1.51. So very cool that they're not that anymore, right? That's
Yeah,
great
they're
for me.
definitely elevated. And I think to your
Yeah.
point, we have not seen all the combos yet. It is still early in the new meta, the
Hmm.
1.5 meta that is shaking out, and new updates are happening all the time. So this is just what we're seeing today. And we
Yeah.
know that honestly, next month, the month after that, it's going to be changed. It's always evolving. So starting with the Armies of Infamy, are
Yeah.
these more viable? Let's tell us about Nuln. Tell us about that.
So first of all, just so that people know, I've been looking at some of the tournament stats, and the Nuln Army of Infamy has a very high win rate right now. It's in something like 55-60%. And so
That's
I
pretty
think that
good.
there's going to be some new lists coming out that people aren't ready to deal with, and they're going to have to figure out a way to deal with it. And that's probably where those win rates are coming from. People,
Hmm.
a lot of people are really overjoyed to bring a more balanced list and try to bring it to the party. But at the same time, the latest FAQ changes have made it so that a skew list that skews into a lot of very fast shooting can be really hard to deal with if your magic missiles don't go off anymore and you brought a bunch of little slow infantry blocks, and now how do you deal with this cloud of outriders? And in Nuln,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to bring quite a lot of outriders as core units, and they can vanguard up, they can grab the objective, they can shoot a million bullets at you and not care about moving and shooting anymore. Or it's only -1 instead of -2 because they
Hmm.
are their army specific rules to get rid of that cumbersome, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah, and then they've got special items to ignore the long range penalty if they put that on a character in there, and then they could give all of these units magic resistance 2 with a Witch Hunter or with a Witch Hunter's ward item. So
Hmm.
yeah, and if you can't ever really get your magic missiles and fireballs off to stop these guys, and you didn't bring any ballistical based shooting, because remember I've been championing for a while, bring some strength 3 AP0 archers. And here's a good
Hmm.
reason for it. Like, what if you have a whole bunch of Nuln Outriders and you have no way to
Yeah.
get to them, right? That's
And I think
pretty
your
painful.
point, it's not that necessarily these players are bringing, a hard definition of a skew list. It's just that
Yeah.
before, the magic was so powerful and so hard to stop with those level fours, often casting with +5 to cast, and not even just a +4 to cast, that you were forced into lists that had a level four just to defend yourself from magic because magic
Right.
resistance wasn't good enough. So it's not necessarily that there are more skew lists, it's just that there are these really cool lists. Look, a lot of them in the arcane journals, right?
Yeah.
That are super cool, super thematic, and they are more skew in the sense that they restrict your options to make a more thematic, flavorful army. But often, a lot of those restrictions are, hey, you get a little bit of magic resistance, but you're not going to get a level four wizard. And before, it just wasn't super competitive. It wasn't super viable in order to do that. But now that the level fours are often only casting at +2, and you can very easily, there's lots of ways to get access to magic magic resistant 1 or 2, suddenly it is way more viable to bring those armies out there. And it's not even that they're not going to get any of their magic missiles off. Inherently, they're just going to get less of them off. That makes a big
Yeah.
difference. Inherently, the pillar of fire is not going to rampage through your entire army from a single cast. So it just opens up army lists and rosters that weren't competitive before are suddenly going to be totally hitting the table and are going to take players by surprise because they haven't been playing against them for the last 6 months
Yeah.
because people weren't fielding them, and so they're going to catch people off guard.
Yeah, and so both of the Empire Armies of Infamy, or at least most of them, and again, I guess actually Empire kind of has like 6 Armies of Infamy because the Knightly Orders are basically 5 different lists. So we'll
Yeah,
get to that in a
more or
second.
less.
Yeah.
It is definitely a culmination. Yeah,
But the vast majority of them are either stuck with only level 1 and 2 wizards, or they aren't allowed to take wizards at all. And that used
but
to be
that's not
essentially
viable,
yeah. Well,
right?
I think it's viable now. I think that's what we're
Now,
talking about. So
correct. That's right.
and there's a couple reasons for that. One of them is that a lot of the time, you might actually only want to get your signature spell and just try to cast it. And if you have level
Mhm.
1 and you just have a couple of those dudes, you can just be like, cool, these guys are pretty cheap. I'm just going to try to get my signature spell, see if I can get it off. That's fine by me. That's all I need to do. So,
Mhm.
and for
Absolutely.
example, you can have level 1 wizards running the summoning from Demonology, and you just take that the wizarding staff that gives you +1 to cast from Empire, which is extremely common. And so you have a lot of guys who are casting with +2 for like 80 points, 85 points with the
Right.
summoning.
And effectively, that's the same as taking a level 4 in terms of its potential to cast the spell.
For most other
And it
people,
is
yeah.
way for most armies. That's pretty effective.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting option for sure. Or you can just say, cool, I'm just going to give MR2 to all of my units and then just pretend I don't even have wizards. I'll take some Priests of Ulrich because guess what? A Warrior Priest has basically the same chance to get his ability off as a level 1 wizard does of casting a spell that's like an 8 plus or a 7
Yep.
plus or whatever it is.
Yeah, at this point, that's right.
And but then the Warrior Priest can't be dispelled. So his chance
Ooh.
of actually getting the ability to go off entirely is potentially higher than the level 1 wizard, right? So
Yeah, at this point, absolutely. Way higher now. And to your point, it's the difference is the level 4s were so oppressive and so meta skewing before. They
yeah,
could just wipe out your armies if you didn't have defenses against them. But now they're much closer to war machines, which war machines hurt, but they also misfire and the shots don't always hit, right? And
yeah,
so typically those war machines, they're going to do some damage, but they're not going to wipe out your army. So it's like if you just like, all right, I'm not going to invest in magic defense or limited magic defense, not in wizards. I now get all those points, those 300, 400, whatever points I was spending on those characters. I'm now going to dump into more units. It's like, go ahead. See, I have such a larger army. You're not going to be able to stop it all, which is really exciting because we want to see the armies on the tabletop.
yeah. And I think that the Warrior Priests have a couple of interesting abilities. For sure, there's the one where you can have the Priest of Ulrich, and he can join
Mhm.
some Outriders and give them all multi-mil damage 2 on their guns. I'm not
Pretty
sure if
cool.
you can do that in the Nuln Army of Infamy, whether you can have the Ulrich Priest, but that is definitely something that people
Not sure.
try, even in Grand Army. And then you can also have the Priest of Sigmar to give the unit the reroll ones to hit and wound. That's definitely
Mhm.
interesting. It can be like
Absolutely.
sometimes that's actually just better than some of the spells you might be trying to cast anyway, right? Like if you're trying to
Mhm.
get a spell off to give your state troops +1 strength or something like that's rerolls to hit and wound could be plenty, right? And none of those prayers have any ability or any rules that say that they like turn off when you cast another spell or something like that. So
Yep.
definitely interesting. The Knightly Orders, though, I think are not a non-issue. They are actually a thing that exists. And you know what I'm going to tell you is you can play ones that aren't even White Wolf. Knights of the White Wolf have a massive they have 2 massive weaknesses. Weakness number 1, they have to take the two-handed hammer or whatever. So in
They
combat,
do.
they are not using a lance or a one-handed weapon, so they are going to have a worse armor save. The regular
Mhm.
Knights of the White Wolf are only a 4-up armor save now because they've got the heavy armor and barding, and then they're not using their shield, right? And so that's not that good. And they're toughness 3, right? So if those Knights of the White Wolf go in there and they fight some, 2 ranks of White Lions, then you could kill 8 the White Lions, and then the White Lions will kill every single knight that hit them in return.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
so
probably
it's
not a
not that
trait you
they're
want.
worse. The difference is infantry
Right.
now have significantly more attacks back with the 2
Yeah.
ranks. And
Yeah.
so the vast again, most of the units in the game, even elite units, typically only have 1 attack. There are plenty of units that do get 2, but most of this game has 1 attack, and you just simply can't do enough damage on average after rolling to hit, rolling to wound, and armor saves. Now that with infantry are more durable than before,
Yeah.
you're just not going to wipe out the 10, 12, 14 models on the other side that could swing back. And so before, when you were safe because you only had to kill 5, or if you killed 4 out of 5, great, only one swinging back. But now you're like, holy crap, I'm going to take 6, 7, 8 hits back, and they might be hitting me with a great weapon. That's a big deal now, especially if you're not wearing full plate, and you don't have that 2-up, 3-up armor save.
Yeah. Um, so then I think there's actually a lot of nightly orders that are interesting to bring, and here's the other reason. Now the reason why everyone says cool, I like knights, I'm gonna play White Wolf. It's because they have the Furious Charge rule, and I was just got done telling you how cool it is that your White Lions and stuff have Furious Charge when we were talking about that in the High Elf army. But when you have Furious Charge on your entire list, I am sitting there as going, okay, I have to make sure you never get to use that rule because I can't let your whole army do twice the amount of damage it normally does. So what I often do is I say, cool, I'm going to march all of my guys into point blank range so you're just 2 inches away and you don't get your Fierce Charge anymore. Right? And
Yeah,
now if you don't have your Fierce
within
Charge,
less than 3 inches away, that's right.
yeah, and if you don't have your Fierce Charge and you're charging my infantry, even if they're just like High Elf Spearmen, and you have 1 attack each and I have 3 ranks of Spear guys, I kind of think that I might just win that fight, right? So the problem with White Wolf is there's not really a great way to screen your 3-inch charge threat range, right? And prevent anyone from doing that because what are you going to throw in front of you that's going to prevent people from getting into, marching into your charge range, right? I don't know. I mean, Pistoliers, I guess. You could take them as a rare choice or something.
It's expensive, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely counters to that. So
Yeah.
I think to your point, Evan, is we'd encourage players to relook at the other nightly orders now that the 1.5 update has dropped. The meta is absolutely shifting. It's changing into a different thing. Big
Right.
blocks of infantry, less level 4s dominating the battlefield. It's a new day out there.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that also I think that the Knights of War, who have the 6-up ward save on just every single dude, cool. That's also
Cool.
fine. They also have fear and they hate undead, and there's probably going to be a lot of undead around. So I think that's, again, 2 attacks is great. 1 attack where you reroll to hit, also pretty good. And then, the Knights of the Fiery Heart have reroll 1s to hit and wound so basically they have like that Sigmar prayer is just active on them at all times if they're a character or if they're an inner circle knight. So I think that's actually pretty good.
It is.
Yeah, so I think that both of those are very viable as well. Sorry, Knights Panther. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So yeah, definitely retake a look at those Armies of Infamy that you might have written off before. Relook at the units with a new light, and relook through the magic items and combos that perhaps you wouldn't have considered the combos before. You might be surprised. I'm confident we're going to see some new lists and some new ideas out there from the player base that we just haven't seen yet.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on from that. What's next? Veteran state troops. So what's going on here, Evan?
So they finally kind of fixed the wording around the Griffin banner. So it basically, if people don't know, don't overthink it. The Griffin banner just doubles your combat resolution from your rank bonus. So if you have 2 ranks, you have +4. If you have 3 ranks, you have +6. And because veteran state troops and regular state troops have the horde rule now, they can get the +6 from ranks alone with the Griffin banner. And if you have close order and you outnumber someone because you brought a relatively decent sized unit of veteran state troops, that's another 2 more points there. You have a banner, you have a BSB, and he can have a war banner in there for a grand total of 11 combat resolution from a single unit.
Ooh, that's pretty impressive.
I think that's pretty freaking cool, and it's also a very thematic and interesting Empire-based thing to do because guess what? The veteran state troops, right? They can have hand weapons and shields. And then you can just parry for a 4-up armor save. So you're trying really hard. Try as hard as you can to not die, right? And so that when they kill 6 of you, you still win combat by like 5, and then they're outnumbered and they break and flee.
It's just going to be hard, really hard to dislodge that unit. That is such an exceptional anvil to have at the center of your army or to hold flank.
Yeah.
That you can whittle them down, but you're not going to bust through them in a single round. It's going to take you multiple rounds, or you're going to have to invest a lot of points or a lot of firepower to try and take that out, which was just basically veteran state troops. So having an anvil unit like that with combat res is very powerful.
Yeah, I was already playing this in most of my Grand Army Empire lists, and they only had combat res of 9 or 8. Yeah, because they didn't have outnumber. That wasn't a thing yet. And then also, if you're fighting, let's say, against a dragon, the dragon had the close order, and now he doesn't have it anymore. So
Correct.
the number of combat resolution points that you've gone up if this unit fights a dragon, it used to be I would win by 1 or 2, and now I'm winning by 4 or 5 just on the static
Makes
combat res, right?
big difference. Big difference. Hmm.
Okay. Demigryph Knights are just an incredible unit for fighting regular infantry. Now, I badmouthed them a lot before because unlike, Demigryph, or unlike Dragon Ogres, they don't have stomps, and unlike a lot of other similar type of units, they don't have impact hits. So nothing guarantees hits and damage with them. But they just have a lot of Strength 5 AP2 attacks, which are very good at going into things like the veteran state troops and just killing all of them to death. And if you have those kind of targets to fight against, Demigryph Knights are happy. The big question is exactly how many do you run? Do you try to put characters in there when the characters can't really get protected from shooting? And it's like, I don't know. But
Yeah.
I think that they're definitely an exciting, interesting choice to put on the table. The problem is that they kind of argue and fight over points with your cannons, right? So you have to kind of take one or the other.
It's hard to fit everything in,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
you're going to need more than two, right? And it's that debate of, do I take three, do I take four, do I take five? And they also take up a lot of space, but they are very good. They always have been good, and they probably have more play now with less dragons and more blocks of infantry than they did before.
right.
Um, all right, General Leadership 10. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So it's actually kind of funny because they made the General Leadership 10, and that really helps make up for the fact that he was weirdly expensive for. I've joked about this constantly, having the same melee stat profile as a wizard of the Greater Wizard of Chaos. That guy has the
Yep.
same stat profile for combat as an Empire General, and so does like a chosen champion, like just the champion from the unit who costs like 23 points. He has the same stat
Hmm.
profile as my 90-point Empire General. So
Hmm.
what does the Empire General do for me? Well, he had Rallying Cry, which was fine, and now he has Leadership 10, which is actually pretty amazing.
Hmm.
There is one small flaw in this whole situation is that they did not FAQ that the Empire General Hans von Leeuwenhoek has Leadership 10. So you have an Empire General character who does not have Leadership 10, even though the regular ones do. That's
Oops.
probably an oversight. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that just having the Leadership 10 bubble in your army gives you that feel of these are humans who are just trying their damnedest to not, crap themselves and run away. And you know
Hmm.
what? Bretonia doesn't have Leadership 10. So in that
No.
sword measuring contest that Empire and Bretonia have against each other, you've got a Leadership 10 guy, and they don't. So that's
Yeah, and
cool.
most armies don't have Leadership 10, right? It's
No?
elves, dwarves, and now Empire has access to one, which is pretty exciting, and it makes a big difference. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, Great swords. We talked about these guys a lot. Do they have play? Do they not have play? Where are they at?
I think they do because they're pretty damn cheap. The only problem Greatswords have is that every other unit that's similar to Greatswords is just miraculous. I don't know how. Mike, do you know how this happened? Every other unit that's like Greatswords is a core unit. Hmm. Why is that the
I
case?
don't know,
I don't know.
because they're really expensive. It's all that fancy clothes that they wear, right? So can't take
Yeah,
them.
well, what's funny is they might be expensive or they might seem special or interesting, but they're 11 points each. So, like, that's not that many. Like a
No,
Dwarf
it's
Warrior with a
not.
great weapon, it has heavy armor and is like 10 or 11 points too. So, like, they're a
Yeah,
similar fight price.
it's not in core, but the price is right for 11 points.
Yeah. Then they have Stubborn and they have Full Plate, and Stubborn is one of the rules that gets inherited by detachment. So, it's one of the things that I've been really excited to try to do is have a decent brick of the Great Swords as a big unit in the centerpiece of my army and have
Hmm.
detachments that are next to them, and those come from your core slots. So you have like
Hmm. Hmm.
12 state troop swordsmen or some handgunners or something on either side, and you make all of that crap become stubborn because it's inheriting it from the great swords. And then if
Pretty
anybody
cool.
charges the great swords, they get hit with an absolute ton of strength 6 attacks because you have two ranks of
Hmm.
guys attacking them, right? um,
Hmm.
and if you're ever doing the charging, well, then surely you have more than just the great swords to charge with. You can charge in with those detachments. You can charge in with your Empire General on a Griffin or something. So if you're ever going to do the charge, you have that backup. And you could also just not charge and shoot them with your cannons. So this being the center of your line that's trying to defend your cannons from getting anyone coming towards them sounds really fun. And I think that giving them the strength 4 is actually the breakpoint they needed to say, hey, gigantic chaos spawn of chaos, if you charge me, you might just die. Like, you might actually just not want to do that, bro.
Yep, yep, it makes a big difference. All right, overcosted units, are they overcosted or is it selective? What's happening
I
here?
think that it's both. So one of the reasons why it really feels like when you're playing Empire they're overcosted is because they're missing special rules that everyone else in the game just
Mm,
seems to just get for free, or a lot of
mhm.
very similar units are just cheaper. Empire are kind of like elves if they were just didn't have the initiative bonuses, but they kept all of their weirdly overpricedness, right? Like if you compare the regular state troopers to things like men at arms or goblins or skeletons and things like that, it's like they're like twice as many points. And so the problem is that points cost for like infantry units is very, very critical because you need to buy like 30 of them or however many, like large numbers of
Yeah,
them. So
big
every
bricks.
point that they cost magnifies their total cost by a lot.
Yep.
Things like handgunners and crossmen. Again, I've been telling you, and I think it's I like to find someone to disagree with me that Ballistical 3 is half as good as Ballistical 4. And so when I spend 8 points each for a handgunner who never hits the side of a barn the whole game, that's too many points, right? That's just a lot of
Hmm.
points. Comparing them with things like the Outriders who do have the Ballistical 4 is like night and day. So that's why you just don't take the handgunners. They cost too many points. So again, I think that it seems like a lot of things in Empire are a little bit overcosted. Like pretty much all of their kind of core infantry troops, and then if you bring the knights and you bring the outriders and you bring cannons, sure, those seem relatively all right. And then you have characters who do not stand up to the characters from other armies, and level 4 wizards are not what they used to be. So the question is, exactly how does Empire compete when it seems like half the things in their list are just like 10 to 20% too expensive? And the win rates that we've been
Yeah.
seeing in the last couple months have shown that sure the changes have helped, but it's not made Empire shoot to the top of the meta or anything, right?
No, and again, as we said, the 1.5 update was not about specifically targeting in general armies. They did
Right.
some selective surgical buffs and nerfs to certain units, but it was actually very few across the board. It really was a huge rules revamp, a huge meta reboot for the entire edition. It really wasn't about trying to balance the individual armies or focus. So Empire, while super fun, super thematic, we love them. We love the models. We love playing them. They're not the on the highest end of the competitive scale, so that's still true with the 1.5 updates. They definitely got a lot of buffs and a lot of love, but the same buffs and loves that everybody else got. So, some of the overcostedness is still a true factor. All right, warrior priests versus wizards.
So we talked
So
about
we've had
this.
warrior priests for a while, right?
Yeah, and I've talked about this for a little while already, but a warrior priest or a archlector might actually just be a better bang for your buck versus a wizard. Because if the wizard is trying, especially like a level 1 or level 2 wizard, like they actually have a much lower chance of getting that spell off than the warrior priest, because all he has to do is just pass a leadership test. The wizards have to like try to get the casting value, they have to not miscast, and they also have to not get dispelled. And then they might be trying to cast against somebody who has magic resistance. So that warrior
Hmm.
priest, he might only have like the 56% chance of getting his prayer, but like the level 1 wizard or level 2 wizard, something like that, might only have a 30 or 40% chance of casting his fireball or whatever
Hmm.
he's trying to cast. So
Right,
once you add in the magic resistance and the dispel threat. So I think
right.
that you can just say, cool, I'll just take priests and I'll just take many of them. I mean, I think that a regular warrior priest can have a charm shield, hand weapon, heavy armor on foot, and now he has a 3+ armor save with parry and a one time, maybe I'll try not to die with a ward save, right? And he's like
Yeah,
70 points to do that.
they're
You could
pretty
just
cost
take like,
effective.
yeah, you could just take multiple of those dudes,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think to your point, it's the same ripple effect. It's not that warrior priests got better. It's just that the ceiling that level 4 wizards were sitting at, which was so powerful, that ceiling was lowered
Dramatically.
significantly,
Yeah.
quite a bit. So it's now that all of a sudden warrior priests that were down here before you're like, well, I'm never going to take this, but now it's like, oh, they're only this far apart, and these are very cost effective. You should really reevaluate those warrior priests and look at putting some of them in your army. And exactly to Evan's point, there's more magic resistance that's we're going to see out there now than we have before, and the warrior priests are just casting off their own leadership, similar to like undead and how they resurrect their own models, and so you're not going to get dispelled. So while it might seem they still don't have great odds of getting their abilities off, they actually at a lot of the times will actually have better odds than a wizard getting theirs that's opposing with another wizard get their abilities off. So it's definitely something to look at and reevaluate and see what kind of combos that your warrior priest can do. Because a lot of the warrior priests too are really focused around buffing your units. And now that if you're taking more infantry units and larger bricks of units, suddenly those buffs are going to have a lot more play than they did when you were taking MSU units. So I'm excited to see, hopefully we're going to see more of them hit the table.
Yeah, and I think that you can also put the priest on, the Popemobile. That's what I call it,
Yep.
the big chariot. And the cool thing about that thing is that when you cast those prayers, you get to cast it on yourself and a unit nearby. So if you have like the reroll
Hmm.
ones to hit or something, you can give it to the guy, his whole chariot, and the unit next to him. And his casting range is further because it's the command range and it goes to 12 inches.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
can have that one arch lector The build that I really like is you give him the twice blessed armor, so he has full plate,
Hmm.
right? Then you can have shield,
Hmm.
so you can have a 3+ armor save.
Yep, it's
That gives
great.
you hammer hand as well, which kind of feels kind of cool because it feels like my warrior priest is just using his prayer to kind of do damage, even though it technically is a spell. So that's a pretty good auto take on that dude. And then you have a toughness 5 chariot with 8 wounds who can cast spell or do his prayers to give you things like the 5-up ward versus shooting. And in a meta where we've got a lot of Cathay, we've got a lot of cannons and stuff like that, I think a 5-up ward versus shooting to just try to protect your knights or try to protect your units of state troops is pretty good.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
All right, we had one more thing, artillery. So what's changed with artillery?
I just think that it used to be that you would just take nothing but cannons and hellblasters, and while the Hellstorm rocket battery unfortunately was not entirely written from scratch,
No,
I
it
would
was
like it
not.
if it was. I used to love that thing. That thing was freaking fantastic, and
It will be back at some point. Have faith. It might be a while. It might be not till edition 2, but it will return to make a triumphant return. But it was not with 1.5.
yeah, I want it to be like a 12-inch template where it's just this
Someday,
freaking
someday.
stupidly big thing.
But let's talk about other artillery. So
Yeah.
how are you reevaluating your artillery
I
now?
think that the mortar is pretty interesting. Is where I'm going with this. I think that the mortar is a large blast. It got some AP on it, so if you have a lot of
Mhm.
blocks of infantry on the other side of the table, that can very easily just score you a lot of points. It's also pretty good against skirmishers because you're like
Mhm.
you can just still hit plenty of them with that.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
I think that the mortar has gone up in value, and it is an indirect fire. So if people are trying to hide behind woods and stuff, you can still just try to throw a mortar at them and see what happens. So
Absolutely.
and I'm a big fan of the large blast. The large blast can definitely do a lot of damage sometimes.
Absolutely. And again, now that we're going to be seeing the more bricks and more units trying to, destroy baggage train, hold an objective, be in a table quarter and such, right? They're going to be in more reliable places where they're trying to control areas of the battlefield, not necessarily rush you with every single thing that they have. So suddenly having an indirect fire piece, something that has that larger blast that can whittle those things down. Again, it's not about wiping out the units; it's about doing enough damage to make them so they can't score, or so they also could potentially panic. They definitely have a lot more play. I think players should definitely reevaluate taking the mortar because it is a pretty good war machine.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I think we made it to the end of Empire. Evan, anything else?
One more thing: summon the elector counts and stay legendary.
All right, we'll see y'all next time for the next video. Bye.